The incessant drumming of the rain against the attic window mirrored the frantic rhythm of my heart. Jasper, a 44-year-old architect in the quaint city of Asheville, North Carolina, was about to descend into a nightmare I couldn't have imagined just weeks before. My marriage to Seraphina, a vibrant and successful real estate agent, had always seemed like a fairy tale. We were the envy of our friends, the couple who had it all: a beautiful home, thriving careers, and a love that felt as solid as the Blue Ridge Mountains surrounding us. It began subtly, with Seraphina working later hours, attending more networking events, and a general air of distraction that hung around her like a persistent fog. I chalked it up to the pressures of her job. The housing market in Asheville was booming, and she was always ambitious. I wanted to be supportive, so I picked up the slack at home, cooked dinner, and tried to be understanding when she came to bed exhausted, turning away from my touch. Looking back, the signs were glaring, but love, or perhaps naivety, had blinded me. The first real crack in our facade appeared when I stumbled upon a text message on her phone. It was a simple "I miss you" from an unknown number. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off as a client, someone overly eager to buy a property. I wanted to believe her, I desperately needed to believe her, but a seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to sprout, its tendrils wrapping tightly around my heart. Driven by a growing unease, I started paying closer attention. I noticed the secretive phone calls, the hushed conversations she'd have when she thought I was out of earshot. I saw the way she'd flinch when I touched her, as if my touch had become repulsive. My gut screamed that something was terribly wrong, but I clung to the hope that I was mistaken, that my fears were unfounded. The confirmation came on a cold Tuesday evening. Seraphina had told me she was attending a real estate conference in Charlotte. I had planned a quiet night in, ordering takeout and catching up on my favorite shows. However, a nagging feeling kept tugging at me. I couldn't shake the image of that text message, the memory of her evasiveness. Against my better judgment, I decided to check her location using the Find My Friends app on our shared family account. What I saw sent a shard of ice through my veins. She wasn't in Charlotte. She was in a small, secluded motel just outside of Asheville, a place notorious for its hourly rates and shady clientele. My first instinct was to confront her, to drive to that motel and rip her from the arms of whoever she was with. But I hesitated. I needed proof, undeniable evidence that would shatter her carefully constructed lies. I called my best friend, Cormac, a retired police officer, and asked for his help. He didn't ask questions, he simply said, "I'm on my way." Cormac arrived within the hour, his face grim. He understood the gravity of the situation without me having to say a word. He suggested we hire a private investigator, someone who could discreetly gather evidence without alerting Seraphina. I agreed, and within a few hours, we had a seasoned investigator named Vivienne on the case. Vivienne worked quickly and efficiently. She placed a tracker on Seraphina's car and set up surveillance outside the motel. The next morning, she called me with the news I had dreaded but somehow already knew. Seraphina had spent the night at the motel with a man. Vivienne had photos and video footage of them entering and leaving the room, their faces clearly visible. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My world tilted on its axis and I struggled to catch my breath. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my heart and soul, had betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. Cormac stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, offering silent support. I looked at him, my eyes filled with a mixture of pain and rage. "I want to see the pictures," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Vivienne emailed me the evidence. I hesitated for a moment, bracing myself for the inevitable pain. Then I opened the attachment. There she was, Seraphina, walking hand in hand with a man I recognized instantly. It was Quentin, her business partner, the smarmy, self-assured man who had always made me feel vaguely uncomfortable. The photos were explicit, undeniable. They showed them kissing, embracing, and entering the motel room together. The rage that had been simmering inside me finally erupted. I wanted to scream, to break things, to inflict pain on both Seraphina and Quentin. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. I needed to be strategic, to plan my next move carefully. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions of my life while my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't shake the image of Seraphina and Quentin together. I confided in Cormac, pouring out my heart to him, and he listened patiently, offering advice and support without judgment. "You need to confront her, Jasper," he said one evening. "You can't let this fester inside you. Get it out in the open and then decide what you want to do." I knew he was right. I couldn't continue living a lie. I needed to face Seraphina to hear her explanation, however hollow it might be. I decided to wait until she returned from her conference to confront her. I wanted to catch her in the act, to see the guilt and shame on her face. When Seraphina finally arrived home, she seemed tired but otherwise normal. She greeted me with a perfunctory kiss and asked about my week. I forced myself to act as if nothing was wrong, to play along with her charade. We had dinner, watched TV, and went to bed, all the while the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like a physical burden. The next morning, as she was getting ready for work, I decided to confront her. I took a deep breath, steeled myself, and walked into the bathroom. "Seraphina, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. She turned to face me, her expression wary. "What is it, Jasper? I'm running late." "I know about you and Quentin," I said, my voice now firm. "I know about the motel in Asheville. I have pictures." Her face paled and her eyes widened in shock. For a moment she was speechless. Then she began to deny it, to insist that I was mistaken, that the pictures were fake. But I held my ground, refusing to back down. "Don't insult my intelligence, Seraphina," I said, my voice filled with contempt. "I saw the pictures. I know the truth." Finally, she broke down, confessing everything. She admitted to having an affair with Quentin for the past 6 months, claiming that she had been unhappy in our marriage for a long time. She said that I was too focused on my work, that I didn't pay enough attention to her, that she felt neglected and unloved. I listened to her excuses, my heart filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. I couldn't believe that the woman I had loved could be so callous, so deceitful. "How could you do this to me, Seraphina?" I asked, my voice choked with emotion. "How could you betray me like this?" She didn't have an answer. She simply stood there, sobbing, her face contorted with guilt and shame. I turned and walked out of the bathroom, leaving her standing there alone. I spent the next few days consulting with a lawyer, gathering evidence, and preparing for a divorce. I was determined to protect my assets and to ensure that Seraphina didn't get away with her betrayal. I also decided to expose Quentin's affair to his wife, Iolanthe. I felt that she deserved to know the truth about the man she had married. I met with Iolanthe at a local coffee shop. She was a kind, gentle woman, and I hated having to break the news to her. But I knew that she had a right to know. I showed her the pictures of Seraphina and Quentin, and she was devastated. She thanked me for telling her the truth and vowed to leave Quentin immediately. The divorce was messy and contentious, but in the end I prevailed. I received a fair settlement and Seraphina was left with nothing. Quentin's wife left him and his career was ruined. They both paid the price for their betrayal. In the aftermath of the divorce, I felt lost and alone. My world had been shattered and I didn't know how to put the pieces back together. But with the help of my friends and family, I slowly began to heal. I focused on my work, traveled, and spent time with the people I loved. I learned to trust again, and eventually I found love again. The pain of Seraphina's betrayal never completely disappeared, but it faded with time. I emerged from the experience stronger and wiser, with a newfound appreciation for honesty, loyalty, and the importance of choosing the right partner. The rain outside has stopped. The sun is shining. I can finally move on.